It is now my great pleasure to introduce Talat Yaqub. Now, I have had the pleasure of working with Talat at various points, and I've always been struck by her commitment. And Talat, as you may well know, is a third sector leader, writer and campaigner who's focused on equality issues across politics, public life and the labour market, in particular championing women, communities of colour and migrants. Talat.
Thank you, Presiding Officer, for the introduction, and thank you to Elector for the kind invitation to be able to speak to you all today. I had the opportunity to do this in 2019 when Elector had their first event, and I said it then and I say it now, what a brilliant looking Parliament. Now, in the work I do, a lot of it is about influencing decision makers, influencing those with power, and I can tell you most of my meetings don't look like this. And that desperately needs to change. But because of that, that's why events like this are so soul-nourishing. They give you a space of hope, they give you a space of solidarity, they give you a space of thinking, well, things might just be able to be different, provided we work together towards that common goal. So, as has been introduced, I am a campaigner and I have been working for a long time across issues around women and girls equality, and particularly understanding that women are not a homogenous group, and that within that, women of colour, disabled women, working class women, and those at the intersections in between, including LGBT women, are more likely to be furthest away from access to opportunity, power and wealth. And anything we do has to respond understanding that there are women specifically in certain groups that have the least power, and we have to be able to focus on them and ensure that the ladder does not go up behind the few women that have made it to the top. I founded Women 50/50 after the independence referendum in 2014. And it didn't matter what side of that independence referendum you were on. It was about a surge of political interest in Scotland, a surge of political commentary and narrative and discussions happening around the dinner table. And a group of us came together and thought, well, how do we channel this into something that brings all sides together and advances women's inequality? And whenever we talked about, well, what could that thing be? We could be advocating for different issues. I've worked on women's labour market equality, their underrepresentation in science, technology, engineering, mathematics, violence against women and girls, the issue of black women's maternal health, for example. All of these issues require space, they require campaigning. But we started thinking about who is it we'd be directing our campaigning to? What do they look like? What do they know? What are their stories and their lived experience? And that's where we thought about, actually, we need to bring back the campaign to have 50% at least representation of women in the Scottish Parliament. When the Parliament was first reconvened in 1999, there was a huge push by trade union women to ensure that women were represented in the Scottish Parliament. And at that time, we actually had, again, at that time, the highest number of women elected to any UK Parliament. However, since then, it actually decreased 2 elections later, illustrating the fact that actually a win at one time is not necessarily lasting change and systemic change over the long term. So we created Women 50/50 again, and like most things in my life, it was created via email, in coffee shops, over conversations that were essentially angry rants. And that's been how most things in my life have started. When Women 50/50 is primarily about legislated candidate quotas. And the reason it's about legislated candidate quotas is because we know that voluntary measures only go so far. Because we're looking for voluntary measures by people who have power. And the people who have power are those who do not look like this Parliament, necessarily. So we advocate for legislated candidate quotas, which would mean every political party had to pursue 50% candidates legislated for to make sure that the candidates that were running in elections, 50% of them were women, and women from diverse backgrounds. We're still fighting for that, but we do have over half of the current Scottish Parliament on our side to try and pursue that, and the majority of political parties on our side to pursue that too. Since 2019, when I gave this speech at the first event of this kind, a lot has changed. That's a long time in politics. And not only has a lot changed in politics, but so have the increasing number of wrinkles, frown lines and grey hairs that I have since 2019, largely trying to work around volatile politics. So hopefully I won't put you completely off by the time I finish this speech. I'm going to break you down and then lift you back up. It'll be fine. But since 2019, we have had a local election that has seen the highest number of women elected in local councils. We've had a national election which saw the first women of colour elected to the Scottish Parliament, the first permanent wheelchair user elected to the Scottish Parliament, and I am genuinely so delighted that they're both in this room because I have a lot of admiration for them both. But I'm sure they'll agree with me in that we'd like to see a world where we aren't still talking about firsts. We'd like to see a world where we aren't celebrating the first time something has happened in groundbreaking moment in 2023. Surely we should be beyond that by now. Yeah? So we need to go further, we need to go faster, we need to be bolder, and we need to be unapologetic in our pursuit of progress and equality for women. It took 22 years of the Scottish Parliament to be existing for the first women of colour to be in Parliament. We've also not had any women, or actually any individuals from the black community as elected representatives in the Scottish Parliament. That's simply not good enough. So there is far to go, and far too often we are still talking about firsts.